Dueling coasters are amazing. The coasters themselves don't have to be very good, but when two coasters interact with each other, it's literally the perfect experience. Take that from me, who has Twisted Colossus and West Coast Racers not too far away. Today's video, we will be going through every single dueling coaster in the world and taking the top 10 and counting them down. This includes Mobius loops and normal dueling coasters and even defunct ones. Also, side note, I obviously have not ridden all of these, or most of these, but this video is meant to cover a broad base, and I honestly don't think anyone has ridden every single one of these coasters anyways. Starting off in our number 10 spot is Racer at Kings Island. There's a lot of generic dueling wooden coasters that kind of just go out and back and don't do much. I would put Racer in this category. The reason it stands out is because it's old and an ace landmark, and it's very enjoyable. There's no elite airtime, there might be some ejector and a good amount of mild floater, but that's really it. It's all about what the name implies, racing. The fun of the dueling coaster is seeing which coaster is going to make it back to the station first. That's what this is about, and is what the experience truly is. I don't really think you can argue with me about that. This is what Racer was meant to do, and what it does do. Also, yes, Racer can be a little rough on the wheel seats, so just avoid that, and it will be a good ride, and it has stood the test of time. Next up in the 9th spot is Gwazi. This is our first defunct coaster on the list, but there's more to come. We obviously know Gwazi today as Iron Gwazi, which is probably 10 times better, but hey, Gwazi was still a great wooden coaster. Of course, this was made by GTI, and we probably all know the problems that plagued this. It got rough, like every wooden coaster that does not bathe in money. Of course, this was a great coaster for the time. The signature element and the peak of dueling has to be the flyby moments. There was a total of 6 of them, and when the trains were timed correctly, it was sick. Imagine flying by another train as you head off in opposite directions. This is what Gwazi did and why it was so good. There was also a mixture of forces and offered something different than a traditional out and back layout that was popular at the time. But the run was not long. After 5 years, the train speed up the track and it became a massive headache. The ride was essentially ruined, and in the rubble, Iron Gwazi was born. There's the problematic roller coasters in a nutshell for you. Nevertheless, Gwazi was a great roller coaster at the time of opening, and would be good if it wasn't for the roughness. The 8th spot goes to West Coast Racers at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Okay, now to put it simply, West Coast Racers is not the most intense, most insane coaster ever. It's just really fun. The highlighting part of this coaster is that it duels every time. Unlike some of the other coasters on this list, Twisted Colossus, I'm looking at you. So what does this coaster look like? Well, West Coast Racers offers a very diverse selection of forces. Of course, you have the airtime and the dueling element on the high 5, and you also have some positive G's on the ending helixes. The LSM launches are punchy, but again, like every coaster on this list, the fact that it duels makes it so much better. The high 5, the feeling that you're racing another train, and just the interactions that it has with each other. It's seriously something that you can't get elsewhere. Also, this is one of the Mobius loop coasters, so once you go through it once, you go through it again. And that makes it a really complete ride. 4 LSM launches, airtime moments, positive Gs, dueling. What else could you possibly ask for? Maybe better trains. To be honest, I like Premier Trains on Skyrocket 2s, and I like Big Apple Coaster, but on West Coast Racers, I feel like the comfort collars are kind of mid. I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, but nevertheless, West Coast Racers is a very solid dueling coaster that is guaranteed to duel every time. Next up in the 7th spot is Dueling Dragon at Happy Valley Wuhan. I'm just gonna say now, there is 3 Dueling Dragons on this list, so take your shot at what the other ones are. I'm just gonna say, the Chinese suck at naming things. However, this coaster is technically Dueling Dragons with a U instead of an E. I had no idea what happened in the translation process. Nevertheless, this is very much a twister coaster that has a good amount of laterals, and the highlighting element is a high 5. In fact, this was the first ever coaster to ever implement a high 5, and of course you now see them on West Coast Racers and Twisted Colossus. I don't know how smooth or rough this coaster is, no one has really ridden it, but it looks to have an amazing layout, and it has buzz bars, so it can't be that bad, right? Also, this was China's first dueling coaster, so that's another thing, I guess. In the 6th spot is a coaster that is very unique, and that's Battlestar Galactica at Universal Studios Singapore. This dueling contraption is a sit-down coaster that duels with an inverted coaster, and spoiler alert, there are more like this on this list. This was built by Vekoma. Now normally I would say something is built by Vekoma, it's either extremely bad or really good, but this one is in the middle. This is new gen Vekoma before they were good. You have their new track designs, new train designs, but you also have a pretty unique layout. I'm just gonna say, the sit-down side is a family coaster. It does not have a single inversions, and the focus on making the blue side cooler by interacting with it. The inverted side is where you have all the action. This side does pull good forces and has a good series of elements, and like all dueling coasters, this is highlighted with the interactions between each other. Now, an interesting thing is both sides have LSM lift hills, so that's cool. Also, another thing to note is that this ride started with 4 across trains, and that's extremely unique for Vekoma. I have never seen that from them. I mean, it's on 2 across now. I'm pretty sure this coaster had a lot of maintenance issues, but that is still quite unique. I just gotta point out one more thing before I'm done. What the hell was Vekoma thinking for the supports? It's just one mess. One big giant knotted yarn ball of white supports, and it looks really ugly. Could they hire a better structural engineer or something? Like, come on, man. Especially for Universal, you can't even tell that there's a pool of water below it. All complaints aside, this is a short but really unique dueling coaster that also has a lot to be improved on. The number 5 spot goes to another Dueling Dragons. This one is also another pair of an inverted coaster and a sit-down coaster, except it's made by Intamin. The interactions with this coaster are brilliant. The fact that you have one invert and one sit-down is rare, and this coaster really plays into these factors. Of course, there's a bunch of times where rolls are interlocking and the dive loops and immoments either dive off each other or towards each other. Also, there's one flyby element, which is really cool. But the one thing that makes this coaster stand out is you have track on top of each other in both the vertical loop and the spike. However, I don't think this adds to the dueling element that much. I mean, from the side, boy, the vertical loop and spike look sick. But I don't know if you get that illusion while riding the line, because you look down and there's coaster below you, not a glass to see through to the other side. Also, both the invert and the sit-down have the same series of elements, so I'm really curious to see which one is better. I'm probably going to guess the inverted side because, number 1, it leaves you more exposed, and number 2, the wicked hang time going through the top side of the vertical loop. Overall, this ride is highlighted by the smooth LSM launches, the comfortable restraints, the diversity of forces, and the interactions with each track. Next up in the 4th spot is another Dueling Dragons, but this one is a lot more familiar to everyone, and that is the one at Islands of Adventure. This is B&M's only dueling coaster, and it's one where both tracks are inverted. Now, compared to other dueling coasters, yes, this has the insane interactions. In fact, it might have the best interactions out of all of them, but it also has an insane amount of positive Gs. These are B&M inverts we are talking about, and the layout is very good, so it's guaranteed to pull good forces as well. Now back to the interactions, of course you have the highlighting element of the 2 vertical loops pulling away from each other. It's so perfect, so good. It may have been too good because it got people hurt, but it looks really cool and probably was one of the coolest elements out there. That's about all I have. I didn't ride this exactly, so I can't talk about specifics, but it has great interactions and pulls good forces, so what else could you ask for? Before we start off our top 3, I want to quickly highlight some honorable mentions. These coasters were close to making the list, but did not, so here are 3 of them right now. The first is Gemini at Cedar Point. We know this coaster, it's literally a certified hood classic. It's what people grew up on, it's a relic of the past, and it's probably not going to last for that much longer. It's still a solid ride though. We also have Matterhorn, which is like one of the most influential coasters ever. It was the first steel tubular track, and it has amazing theming because it's a Disney coaster. I just wish it was a little bit smoother. And last but not least is the Dueling Dragon model made by Beijing Shibali Amusement Equipment, basically one of those copycat manufacturers. But these clones pack in 2 inversions with both an inverted track and a sit-down track, so there's good interactions, but it's very unique, so it deserves a spot on this list. Also, for more honorable mentions, you have the generic out and back Woodies, Dueling Woodies, and 50% of them have racers in their name, so you can go check that out if you want. Starting off our top 3 is Batman and Robin the Chiller. This is like Mr. Freeze Reverse Blast Beta. It's like a watered down version of it. Like Mr. Freeze, this dueling coaster is a premier LIM coaster. The original launches on both sides are very powerful and add a whole lot. You then fly into either a Cobra roll or an inverted top hat, and both of these are very intense with a lot of positive Gs. You then kind of hit a 0G roll while riding up in what kind of looks like a boomerang. This is the highlighting element of the ride. Going through the 0G roll gives you an amazing sensation of forces as you are kind of like just throwing around. I don't know how to explain it. And the best part is you go up a bit and then you do the whole layout backwards, and you bet that it gets pretty crazy going backwards. It's like a boomerang on steroids, or like I said, a watered down version of Mr. Freeze. This coaster is insanely unique, and the Gs that is pulled does not go to waste. And on top of that, you have that dueling element. I don't know how well the interactions actually are, but it's present, and that's what matters. I feel like this is one of the coasters that can stand alone without the dueling aspect, and it's why it makes it so high on this list. Up in the number 2 spot is a coaster that has actually not been built yet, and that is Starfall Racers at Epic Universe. This mock multi-launch has an amazing series of elements, and above all, very good interactions. I think this is probably the dueling coaster with the best interactions, only behind Dueling Dragons. The highlighting element has to be this dual roll patented by Mock. It's basically where one train inverts over the other on the way up, and the other train inverts over the other on the way down. It should be pretty interesting. This is going to be a very smooth ride with an immense amount of airtime. The restraints are going to be comfortable, allowing for great hang time, and there will also be some good positive G's mixed in. This is mock, so the launches are hit and miss, but we can only hope that it's good. I mean, the layout is amazing, the launches better be too. I have a full analysis on this coaster on my channel, so if you want, you can go check it out. I get a lot more in depth than this. Nevertheless, this is a solid coaster that will receive a lot of attention upon its opening, and hopefully will live up to the hype. The gold medal goes to none other than Twisted Colossus at Six Flags Magic Mountain. What did you expect? No, really, what did you expect? This is the only RMC dueling coaster, which I feel like automatically makes it the best dueling coaster. Out of every single coaster listed on this list, this one has the best forces, and it's probably because it's made by RMC. There is so much airtime. God damn, is it amazing. My thighs disagree, but I think it's very good. The series of elements are near perfect, and you have everything you could ever need. This is a Mobius loop, so the ride is very long, and that's cool, though some complain about it, but I think it adds a lot to the experience. One thing to mention is this ride barely duels. Six Flags decides to have terrible operations and does not have any sense of urgency on the ride platform. Like, literally no one working there cares at all if this ride duels or not. It's really sad, because dueling is what makes this ride stand out. To put it bluntly, Twisted Colossus is a middle tier RMC coaster. Is that a bad thing? No, it's not. It's still elite, but it's a middle tier RMC coaster. The single thing that makes it stand out is the dueling element, and when it is dueling, holy shit, it's dueling well. RMC knows how to make a good dueling coaster. The interactions are amazing, and that combined with good forces is literally all I need to make a perfect coaster. Do I need to explain more? So that's the top 10 dueling coasters of the world. Let me know if you agree with my decisions in the comments section below, and as always, make sure to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.